What it do? Today we're going to talk about the trade that we took on NASDAQ today. Today was a good day. It was pretty self-explanatory. And yeah, let's get into it. So coming in on the 4-hour on both indexes, the first thing I noticed was the fact that we were in the middle of this 4-hour gap, or at least we had tapped into this 4-hour gap that we had formed yesterday during our big push down. And basically, we also had this candle out of it and this one out of it on ES. And this candle was only I think 30 minutes from closing, and it was super bearish looking. Obviously, I'm not going to base fully my bias off of a half closed 4-hour candle, but that's just kind of what I was thinking. So I was looking for a rejection out of that fair value gap. And if you looked on the hourly coming into market open, we had gotten that rejection on the hourly. We had these candles kind of confirming that. And then on this candle, this one was the one that closed right off of market open, we were pretty bearish on it. It was kind of just floating around, and then so that one really wasn't a bias maker. But we also had an SMT here. So automatically seeing that on NASDAQ, I don't want these highs. I don't want these highs. One, because they're in the middle of this 4-hour gap, and they were the reason why we pushed lower, and they were also SMT'd highs. On ES, we had failed to push below these right off market open, and NASDAQ was already under them. Here, I'll look on the 15-minute. It'll be more apparent. So that was also something I was keeping in the back of my mind. But overall, I wanted trades on NASDAQ because NASDAQ was the one that was pushing more to the downside. And on the 15-minute, there was not a whole lot. There was this gap that I was looking at, and that was kind of what it was going to be my condition for the day. That ended up getting inverse right off the market, or right before market open. But then literally the first candle, we had like a crazy market open candle. Yeah, market open candle absolutely dipped down, and then the second one dipped down as well. And then we basically just got super close to these lows. A little bit of a rejection candle, but I wasn't too concerned about that just because I did not want anything higher. There was no real draws higher. These weren't really good draws. These were already put into a fair value gap, and so were these. So overall, there wasn't really anything I could see higher coming into market open on the 15-minute. I was basically just looking at this 15-minute gap. I wanted us to inverse that by pushing past it, and then since we had this inverse gap here, and this was our low that we made, I wanted us to strongly close past that low as well. And that's what we did right after market open. We strongly closed past that low. We ended up going all the way down to these lows. Good morning, Gabe.
Good morning.
We ended up going pretty close to these lows. We did form a rejection candle, but wasn't too concerned about that. And at this point, I just wanted basically me to get a decent risk reward on this trade. So I was waiting until we pushed about into here. My risk reward could have been a little better. I ended up on my broker, I ended up placing stops up here, and it was probably only a 0.8 risk reward. I should have placed some right here, because that's still plenty of breathing room. But I entered off of this because I didn't just want to market order just because of how crazy bullish these candles were. So I waited for this candle to close, and this is where my stop should have been. I did place it a little higher because it's harder to place them in the right place, because my broker's a little bit different always than actual trading view. But I ended up entering off of that candle, and the reason why I didn't necessarily in a way that is confirmation, but the reason why I didn't wait for break of structure, anything like that, is because my draw on liquidity was already confirmed. On the hourly, we were rejecting out of this gap strongly, and then my condition was respect this 15-minute gap, which we technically didn't, but we also did, you know what I mean? If it would have, if the 15-minute would have been spaced a little bit differently, we would have. And then I wanted us to push past this gap and push past these lows. And that's what we did. And clearly, if we're going to come down and get, how far away is this? Like 16 ticks away from our drawn liquidity, of course we're going to sweep that out, or at least there's a very high probability that we are. But you also need, after seeing these candles, I needed to make sure that I got a proper risk reward, because obviously if we would have placed stops here, we more than likely would have gotten stopped out. And I also think it's just healthy to place a good risk reward and not be too, pushy to get into these trades. Like, obviously, if this candle would have flushed all the way down here, I wouldn't have entered off of that. You know what I mean? But we ended up getting a good candle closure. And then after that, we pretty much just consolidated a ton. It was super annoying getting stuck in this range, but, overall, I think it was just a slower day, and that's just something you're going to have to deal with. And then we ended up breaking out of it here. Then at this low, or at these, this push, I put my stops to break even. I think that was a safe bet to do, because obviously this could just be a sweep, and then it could be consolidation, liquidity sweep, and then we could push up. So that was just kind of me being protective, and my stop loss would have been all the way up here, not right here, which is where most people would have put their entry after this breaker structure. That's kind of what was going through my mind when thinking about it. So yeah, I put stops break even, ended up closing out for like 300 or something on the day. Just a 1-to-1 risk reward. My RR did get messed up a little bit, but it doesn't really matter. All I care about is the fact that I executed well, I traded well, and then overall, yeah, we caught a dub on the day, and didn't end up making some stupid mistake. But yeah, I'd say coming into market open, bias was super bearish, and all I needed for confirmation on this draw was a push past this. We got that. We got super close to those lows, so at this point I just need a good entry down to those lows. And really the only reason why we ever would have gotten stopped out is if our drawn liquidity was wrong. That's something that I need to make sure that I'm doing every single day, is placing my stop loss in a position that if it would get tagged, or my drawn liquidity would have been wrong. So yeah, overall super content day. I took out of the position literally on take profit. I don't know. It just, my broker, I think my stop loss was up here. It was pretty high, and overall, I think it could have been better, but it was still a 1-to-1. But anyways, yeah, I'm gonna stop just talking in circles. But yeah, great day, great trading day.